Well, good day, good afternoon, whatever time of day it is where you are. I've been asked a very pertinent question, not about songs this time, but about production methods and why I don't go up to a bigger machine. I'm still tempted to go back to Tascam or whoever, more likely Tascam because I like Tascam stuff. No product placement here, by the way. But I've used an 8-track. Before I used an 8-track, it's worth me mentioning that the 6 Cleaners from Venus albums before Life in a Time Machine were done on one of these. It's, if you can see that okay, it's what's called a pocket studio. Now back in about 2010, 2011, a community radio station started up around here and I wanted to lend a hand, and I realised that there were lots of people who wanted to do shows and could do shows, but not many people could do adverts, and no one really was thinking about comedy. So I thought I would do a bit of comedy, some funny ads, something wacky, something more in the Kenny Everett line than the usual, "Hi, welcome to Radio Double Glazing. Why don't you drop in and have a cup of coffee?" Well, you know, that has its place, but I thought we ought to have something English, something a bit ironic, a bit Monty Python, a bit Kenny Everett. And this would be the perfect vehicle. This was the digitisation of me, this pocket studio, because I'd been used to using a Tascam Porter studio years ago. But once the Cleaners got a bit successful and I went over to doing more spoken stuff, I lost touch with home recording as such. I'd go around to friends' studios. For instance, I made an album with Andy Partridge in his ADAT 8-track studio, but it was more like a professional studio in the way he ran it. And the same with Nell from New Model Army, a very good friend of mine. I made a few albums with him, solo albums. When I drifted back, because I started making these adverts, and of course the thought occurred to me, could I, the so-called king of DIY, cheapskate recording production, could I make an album on a Tascam Pocket Studio? So I did, of sorts. I kept it very basic, you know, a few instruments, one voice, and then gradually it grew. It grew and it grew. And I made a lot of albums on it. I made, what was it called, Last Boy in a Locarno. I made it, pretty much everything up to there. I made a whole pop musical, which I've forgotten the name of now because it's gone out of my head. But if you look up anything between About the Lake District and Life in a Time Machine, you will find they're all been done on one of these. And it was starting to get silly because I was buying all the accoutrements and the spares and the leads until suddenly I was making a record with all surrounded by my instruments, and it was all going into this. And then I was hoiking it off that and putting it onto an ancient Audacity program and trying to juggle it. And I'm quite obstinate, I suppose, because I'm an East Anglian. So what I did was eventually thought, why don't I get one of their 8-tracks? That should do me. That's what a lot of my favourite records are made on, round about the time. The Beatles, for instance, were recording on 4-track right up through to about 1966, I think, and then into 1966 Revolver, and then round about Sgt. Pepper's, they synced up 2 studio machines in Abbey Road, using one of the tracks to drive the 2 together as a kind of sync track, and that's when they made Sgt. Pepper. And that kind of, I believe the expression is that was the game changer. And I think something similar was going on in America as well. So people had gone up to 8. This was round about 67, 68. I very much liked those sounds that I heard. And for me, I was still listening, you know, as I would have been about a 14-year-old then. And those sounds really impressed me, especially when I heard them in headphones. And I've never really got over them. I thought, why did records, so far as I'm concerned, start getting worse once it started getting up to, well, maybe not 16-track, I could forgive them, but to 24-track. So what I did in the end was I got the Tascam, and I've got really good at it. I still use the ancient Audacity program, but the thing about a Tascam is this. It means the production values and methods I'm using are similar to the ones that the engineers were using between, say, about 67 to about 72 maybe, in a lot of cases. which means if I put the drums down, and then I've put some extra drums down, and then I've put some percussion down, I've put the bass down, I've already used up half the tracks. If I want to add a tambourine on top of that, I've used 5 tracks and I haven't even started. So I put a guide guitar down and maybe a guide voice. I've only got 1 track left. What am I going to do? I'm going to bounce this, 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 this and this all together onto these 2. So now all those things, the drums, the percussion and the bass, I've made that production decision. I've had to do it very carefully because if I've got it wrong, that's all I've got left. And I became quite adept at it. So now I can start, you know, putting an acoustic guitar here, an acoustic guitar, then bouncing them together, and then mucking about the electrics. And I've still got these 2, and maybe 1 spare one here, to do some vocals on. Very often I will put the vocals down quite early on in the proceedings and get them right. Because once I've got them, everything else is cake decoration. If you go putting a load of heroic guitars down straight away, you are very loath to lose them when you suddenly find, hang on a minute, we've got a singer wants to move in here and he or she cannot hear themselves because there's some guitar hero in the corner belting away. So that's what I liked about 8-track. You make your decisions as you go along, and so it makes you concentrate. And you take risks and sometimes you bugger it up. But the sweetness in this particular method is that once you've put all your stuff down into subgroups, which is what they would do on a big mix. They reinvented the wheel basically. They thought, we've got too many tracks, what are we going to do? We've got the drums across 8 tracks. I know, we'll put them on a subgroup. So now you've got 4 subgroups. So why don't you just do the job properly in the first place? And that's what I do. And it means that when you're mixing 8 tracks, it's a lot bloody easier than trying to mix 24. A situation which Andy Partridge called all hands on desk, where you've got 2 guys spread across the mixing board and you've got another 2 guys leaning over the top. So bring that hi-hat in there, take that extra vocal out there, spin that wash of C music noise then, and you end up doing that. I was thinking, why don't you just do it all at the time? And anyway, you can drop it all, if you have done it on 8-track. Nowadays you can do a whole mix and put it onto Audacity, then go and leisurely take your sound effects and your extras and just drop them in and somehow squeeze them on a WAV. If this makes any sense to anyone. But yes, there is a reason why I stick to 8-track. I like the production methods. I'm comfortable with it. Nonetheless, that does not mean that I haven't been thinking lately, supposing I went up to 16. I mean, I think what would clinch it for me was if I found out that Tascam, whose gear I know best, actually made a 16. But they don't, they make this great big thing and it's got 24. They've even got a 32 track. But me getting a 32 track would defeat all of my production methods. I'd be stuck with a big studio situation where I've got to have loads of stuff doing that. And I'm a simple fellow. So I'm sticking for 8 for the time being. But if I find something that is strictly a 16, I might just risk it, you know. But for the time being, I'm an 8-track guy. And that, I hope this answers your question, is why I'm an 8-track guy. I hope I didn't go too fast for you. Thank you.